What's up, guys? Felix Karpeh here with Enthusiasts and Entrepreneurs Podcast. And today I have a very special guest, Jesse Xiong with Humble Crew Detailing. And we're going to learn a little bit about his story today. He has a fascinating story and a bunch of gems that he's ready to drop on you guys. So here we go with it. Jesse, how are you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing good, Felix. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So to get straight into it, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, Humble Crew Detailing, how you got started with it?
Yeah, Humble Crew Detailing, it really came out of a desire to find purpose in my own life. And so from like 2017-ish all the way to like early 2019, I kid you not, I think in just 2018 alone, I had 8 jobs because I was, my professional background is in sales. And so I sold mattresses, I sold cars for a while. I had a lot of like miscellaneous jobs, sold furniture, and, so my professional background's in sales. And after being burnt out of that career path, I started exploring different avenues of like, hey, maybe I can find purpose in another job but eventually I just kept going through these different types of jobs, and I found that I was just not happy. And I remember at the time, like I was making a lot of money from sales, but that money wasn't making me happy. And so I was like, well, what's wrong? What's happening, right? And so after I had so many of these types of jobs, I remember my low point, was the real turning point in my life, was I remember I actually got fired from a job. And I remember, so I had gotten fired for misuse of equipment. And it was silly because like the company that I was working for had never trained me how to use this equipment. They just said, hey, use it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I used it wrong, and they're like upset with me. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but how was I supposed to know? But anyway, I got fired. And then I remember driving over to my wife's workplace. At the time, my wife and I used to carpool. And so obviously at the end of the day, I'd go and pick her up, and then we would both go home. But obviously I'd gotten fired. So what else am I going to do? I'm going to drive over to workplace and I'm like, hey, I need you to talk to you. And this was really personal, but I sat there. She came out and she was like, oh, what's wrong? And I'm like, you know what, man, I cried for real. I was like, because you get fired, and you as a man, you're like, oh, I feel so worthless, like, oh, I don't make any money, like can't support my wife, pull my own weight. And I remember that was my low point. And my wife was very supportive, and she was like, it's all right, like, it's gonna get better. And so I thank her for pulling me out of that low point in my life. But that low point was the turning point for me too, because it was like, okay, no more of this BS. What am I going to do with my life? And so the first thing I did was I started managing my money better. And so I decided like, hey, how do I dig myself out of this pattern of month to month, paycheck to paycheck, and not really living a fulfilled life? And so the first change was in me, where it was like, okay, I need to stop spending my money on this, this, and this. And if I do want to buy stuff, I had to have a separate fund for that, that's outside of my main savings. And so that was the first step, was, hey, I need to save money on my spending. And then the second part was, well, what do you want? Like, what, how do you want to accumulate wealth? And so I started reading a lot of books and just becoming educated on how to make money work for you. And so outside of my detailing business, I actually love investing in real estate. So I know about that too. But so anyway, like I had a few more jobs after that event. And I remember at the start of the pandemic, I was working for a company, and they had hired too many. So I was a detailer for this company, and they had hired too many folks. And so they ran out of work. And so it got to the point where I was on call. But like when you're on call, you're maybe topping out at about 30 hours a week. And it's just like, I can't live off of 30 hours a week, man. Like I can't do this, And eventually they just stopped calling me. So I was like, oh, all right, well, I guess I got laid off, and so that was during the height of the pandemic, and so the pandemic was starting to really warm up and get kind of hot. And so I was getting unemployment at the time. And when I was getting unemployment, I had all this time, you know, and my wife and I had already positioned our lifestyle where we could live off of just her income by herself. All of my income was just straight up extra. And so um, all the money that I brought in, we saved it. And then now that I was getting unemployment, then I had the time and the money to start deciding what I wanted to do. And then, you know, after that, it took a few months, but I finally decided, like, man, do I really want another job? And the answer was like, no, I really don't. And it's not because like, oh, I hate my bosses, or, you know, like, oh, you know, I hate working for the man, or I hate not being in control. It wasn't any of that. It was just the pursuit of freedom. As a matter of fact, I'm still pretty good friends with my previous employer, even though we're now competitors. I look up to him with much respect. And so, but yeah, so I had all this money, now I had all this time, and I had been dumping time into the education half of it. And, you know, so I finally thought, you know, hey, maybe I should take my detailing company full time, because at the time I was just doing it as a side gig, and I'd got maybe 2 to 3 cars a month. I mean, it was really slow. But yeah, I decided, like, hey, I'm gonna open the LLC, I'm gonna get insurance, I'm gonna make it legit, you know. And you know, at the time I was operating out of my townhouse in Shoreview, so it wasn't anything glamorous. It was just, I was out of my townhouse, you know, in this tiny little garage. And so very, very humble beginnings. And when I opened my business, it was initially like very slow, and I was kind of hesitant on, like, oh, can I even take this full time? But because I had unemployment rolling in, I could afford to kind of take that risk, take that jump. You know what I mean? Like, I could still, and even if I didn't have unemployment, I was still fine, because like I said, our lifestyle had been positioned in a way where I could afford that. I could afford to be a stay-at-home dad, even though I don't have kids. You know, I could have just stayed on my bum and play video games all day. But obviously, I didn't do that. But and then, you know what? As I was going through the phases of the early startup in my business, it was very difficult, because, you know, you as the entrepreneur, no one tells you how to do anything. You can watch hundreds of YouTube videos, and, you know, it's still going to be like, well, what do I do? You know, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so the key, you know, the key part of my journey, or I guess my business's journey, that allowed it to scale was actually in taking a risk in marketing. So up until that point, you know, I had social platforms, but they had a very small following of, I think, maybe 500 folks. Like, it wasn't a lot. And so, you know, I was just posting out pretty mediocre content, and, you know, it was whatever. And I would get business very, very slowly, mostly through word of mouth, and more importantly, like, me going out into the community and talk to folks and whatever. But the big leap was when I hired my first marketer. And you know, it was a huge leap, because at the time, I think I was like, I had to put down like $3,000. And as a, you know, as a small business owner, $3,000 is a lot of cash. Like, I did not, like, that's a large risk, you know, at the time for me. And so, but I took the risk, and I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. But, you know, I put in the cash, and I'm a man of faith. So, you know, I prayed to God about it, and I was like, you know, I'm not really sure what's going to happen. And, you know, well, it happened. So, during that time, you know, it really tested my faith, and it really tested my wit, you know, my will to I guess, progress. And so luckily that gamble did pay off. And because of my experience in sales, I was able to generate, turn the leads that the marketer was generating into closed sales. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, I'm doing, you know, when I'm going from like 3 cars a month to like 2 per week, so like 8 to 10 per month. And that's like a huge difference in business, right? And so it got to the point where I talked to my wife, and I was like, you know, I think I need a shop. Like, I think I'm getting a little bit too big for this little garage. And I wanted it to look more professional, right? As I was getting all this experience and all these cars coming in, I was just like, well, I want this to look a certain way. And so I bought my home that I'm in now in Brooklyn Center. And so I turned that garage into, you know, more shop worthy, right? It has like nice flooring, nice walls, nice everything, and it looks legit, but it's still a little 2-car garage. So I was doing it out of there for a while. Then I opened my shop in Coon Rapids, and so that, obviously it went great first. I had an employee, and then I also hired an apprentice, and so we were knocking out cars through the summertime in Coon Rapids. That whole debacle, I mean, that the deal fell through. So long story short is I lost my shop, and I'm not legally allowed to talk about what happened, but I lost my shop. And we had reached a settlement. So it's like, okay, I've gone my way, you've gone your way. Like, okay, what do we do now? Right. So a big hiccup. And so we moved back into my garage. And so we're doing that. I had to lay off my employee, but I kept my apprentice. And so we were just, scaling it here. And in the meantime too, like I've run into a lot of hiccups where I had to like fire that marketer that I initially hired, because he was doing some shady stuff on the side. And that's a different story for a different day, but he was doing shady stuff on the side, and I had to fire him, hire a new guy, and essentially start over. But the big difference about starting over the second time, like starting from scratch the second time, I have no shop, I have no marketer. Now I'm back to square one, right? Mm-hmm. And so the big difference was that I already knew.
Jump into that. What did that feel like?
Man, it was like, it was such a headache.
Your best months ever to being humbled once again and starting from ground zero.
It was annoying, but it actually wasn't that bad. And the reason why was because the second time around, I already knew how to build this thing back up. I knew how to scale the business now. And so despite being dropped down back to square one, I already knew the game. So I was just like, oh, okay. So this is just, what pieces are missing in my business. Okay, just go figure that problem out and solve it. And so it's funny because I went back to square one, but my profits, now that I didn't have all this overhead with the employee and the shop, I actually profited more. So, and so the months that I've been operating out of my garage again, I make just as much, if not more, than when I had my shop. It's just obviously on a much smaller scale. Because I already understood how to scale the business and how each of the important parts in the business operate, I was able to put it together really quickly and just scale it down, back into my little 2-car garage. But now I'm booked out usually about a month at a time. And, it's not easy, and it's definitely not handed to you. You have to grind every single part. But, now I'm opening my second shop, and it's I think it's gonna be fine. I'm hiring another guy, and for the most part, I feel like God has been on my side. I've just been exceptionally lucky, but I've also been blessed with the knowledge of how to go down this path and make it work for me. I would say the hardest part of all of this was just figuring out the system of things that need to work together to make your business run. And so I always tell folks where it's like, I always was going to run a business. I just happened to clean cars, and I just happened to do my trade. That's like the minuscule part of my business. The actual business is figuring out, okay, what is in the sales, what's in the marketing, what's in the finance, what's the accounting look like, what's the HR look like. I hate HR. That's, my wife does all that. But it's all these moving parts that you have to figure out how to work together. And so, a lot of times I'll see a lot of these detailers open up, side hustles. And for me, it's like, I don't want to like sound like I'm bragging, but I'm not scared of them, because it's like, all right, you guys just clean cars. That's easy. That's easy. Everybody could do that. But to operate on this level where it's like, oh, I got all these other moving parts, then you become a real competitor, and so I definitely recognize who my real competitors are in the Twin Cities. And the nice thing about the detailing community here in Minnesota is that we, for the most part, know each other and respect each other's work. I haven't really found too many people that are like, "Ooh, we're the best," and "Ooh, you're my competitor, I can't talk to you." Like, I haven't really found too many of them. There are a few, but I'm gonna let them stay in their lane. You know what I mean? So now in entrepreneurship, there's two halves to business. There's the analytical side, that's my wife, and then there's the visionary side, that's me. And so my wife is able to do day-to-day stuff like accounting, finance, numbers, that kind of stuff. My brain does not like that stuff. I know how to do it, but I hate it, right? And then on the contrary, I love the visionary stuff. So I can see where I want the business to go, and then I can I see the goal, and then I build back from that goal. My wife's the opposite, where she's here, she builds steps to that goal. You know what I mean? That's the best way I can describe that. But you need both for your business to scale, because you can't have just one or just the other. I've seen that, and that doesn't work out. And then like, if I like your natural ability is like, okay, what are you actually good at? And so for me, I have very strong people skills. I'm good at sales, and I'm very good at just networking and being out there and being open and meeting folks. I'm really good at that. My wife hates that stuff. She I don't want to say is an introvert, but she would much rather not talk to you. And so the idea of sales is very, like, she hates it. Early into her adult life, she sold Cutco knives, and she hated that. And then she got into insurance, and she hated selling insurance. So but for me, I thrived in that environment. And so if I was like, let's say I was solo and I had my personality, as it is, then I would have to hire an accountant, a finance person. Like, I'd have to hire someone to do that. And then for my wife's side, like, if she needed someone like me, then she would need to hire a sales guy, hire a content creator, hire a networker. She would need to hire that, because that's not her strong suit. So the idea is, do what you are good at, and then hire the best people to do what you either are not good at or just don't want to do. And so, when we're talking about systems, business is a lot of systems. And so I'm very fortunate that my wife just happens to be the other side that I need. And so that's, in my opinion, having my wife alongside with me is what is allowing me to scale this business, because all of these moving parts are just moving really well. And so I'm able to scale it with relative ease, versus I could totally see how this would be very difficult for someone with neither of our skill sets. That would be really hard. Like, you need to hire a lot of folks. And then if you're hiring a lot of folks, then your profit margin is real low. And it's just like, so
what are some things for somebody who is going to a detailing shop or looking to get their car, cleaned in pristine condition? What are some things that you would recommend somebody who's looking to take it somewhere professionally?
The first thing I would look for is, I would ask them about, hey, tell me your process, and if they can't tell you the process, then I'll be honest, like, that you probably shouldn't go to them. One of my big pet peeves with a lot of the places I had been at was that they would skip steps, in their process. And so I'll give you perspective on a lot of the shops I went to. Their wash routine is all of 15 minutes. And I'm gonna tell you right now, my wash routine is about an hour and a half on average. And it's not because I like being inefficient, but it's really more because this is the step, this is the process, and you don't skip steps. You know what I mean? You don't skip steps when you're doing this type of work. And so, with my business, it really cultivated from an obsession for doing it right. You know what I mean? I'm not saying these other places do it wrong, but I am saying I do it right. We take the time to go through each, however mundane step it is, we make sure we go down that list. So yeah, that's what I would do, is I would, one, go look at their process. Secondly, I would go look at their reviews. So you need to go on Google and just do your homework. Like, hey, what are people saying about this company? And then three, you got to look at their reputation in the community, which I guess is also in the reviews. But usually, if you're a good business owner, you're going to have some sort of social media presence, or, something like that. Go see what people are saying. Go see what they do. And fourth, and I think this is just as important as the other ones too, is, hey, are these guys going to take care of you if things go wrong? I know there's a lot of companies out there that will nickel and dime you to death, or when it comes to warranty claims and doing the right thing, they're not willing to do it. At my company, and I've learned this lesson, fortunately, the easy way, through sales. I'm gonna tell you the story. One of the best sales guys that I ever met worked for Porsche Minneapolis, and his name was Darren. I forget his last name, but his man's name was Darren. And all of the highest end clients in the Twin Cities, when they were buying exotic vehicles, not just Porsches, bought them through Darren. And you would think, okay, apex sales guy, what's this guy like? You're probably thinking like, ooh, he's probably high energy. He's probably like bam, 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 sales, sales, sales. He's not like that. He's actually super chill, super calm. And, with him, he was always willing to do the right thing, and he anticipated his clients' needs. And his recommendations and his knowledge was obviously very good. But his clients just kept coming back to him because he was such a valuable, fountain of knowledge, and he understood his clients. And then even when things went south, he would always take loss to do the right thing. And that attitude really propelled him to great heights at his profession. Now, I never knew the numbers directly, but I know that he made up for half of the dealership's business, and that's a lot of money. Him, one man, okay? So I was very fortunate to witness his sales ability and to realize that, to be good at sales, you just have to do the right thing, and you have to anticipate your client's needs. But a lot of times, like let's say for whatever reason a coating out of my shop fails, or it stops performing the way it's going to perform, I back up all my work. Like, I back it up. I don't make my coating company back it up. I just straight up back it up. It's like, okay, if this repair or this replacement is going to cost me, let's say $300 in labor and in material costs, like, okay, what's $300 in the lifetime of this relationship? Is nothing. You know what I mean? Even if it was like $1,000, it's like, okay, what's $1,000 in the grand scheme of your reputation? That's nothing. You know what I mean?
Oh,
But
yeah.
I've seen other business owners where they'll like nickel and dime you, like, oh, what, like, what, you did this, you did that, like that, and and then at the end of the day, the client will not necessarily remember what happened, but they will always remember how you made them feel. You know what I mean? And so I guess with all of my clients, I always strive to do the right thing first, even if it costs me money. It's like, hey, my reputation's on the line. I'm gonna always do the right thing. You know what I mean? Even if it's not fair for me, or even if it sounds silly, it's like, hey, my reputation's on the line. I'm gonna always do the right thing. And you know what? Next time, let's say the first time they're like, oh, this went bad, but I'll remember that Jesse and Humble Crew Detailing did the right thing. They took care of me, and I can still recommend them even though I had this hiccup. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So
Absolutely. No, backing that work, and honestly, if you offer it, you should definitely, uphold it all the way. So no, definitely. Well, that was some great information, man. I love how you don't just focus on the I don't want to say the business side, because I do feel like the business side is important, but also just like, finding your happiness and that purpose within what you're doing as well too, because, integrity, keeping your word, things of this sort, is so very important. And I feel like a lot of the times, especially within today's day, people just kind of like, cast the real character driven qualities. They just kind of cast it to the side. So no, I really appreciate that about you, man.
thank you. It's I've seen a lot of different businesses, and I just decided, well, what type of business do I want? Do I want one where it's like I'm nickel and diamond folks and it's like, hi, I gotcha? Or do I want one that builds long-term clients for years? And that's what I want. I realize the key to wealth, no matter if you're running your own business or you're in a profession, is how much can you give? The more you give, the more you get. And a lot of folks don't realize this, but when I was working at Porsche, I was exposed to another level of money, as you would imagine. And you know what? The richest folks are the nicest folks. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Like, these folks who are buying multi-million-dollar cars and whatever, man, they were real generous and they were real kind. And so there's one thing to learn, is that, hey, what can you do for them before them, versus thinking about what can they do for me? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's huge. That's huge. And even more so, like the fact that when you're looking for a job, you are also looking for your purpose. You don't hear too many people talking about that. You know, a lot of people are just looking for the money, you know, what can pay the bills, but you found that in that sales job, and it still, you know, didn't bring things full circle for you. And even the fact that, you know, you were at this vulnerable point in your life, and your wife, shout out to her, came to you and was like, hey, you know, we got this, and just holding you down is so important, because I feel like I heard somewhere that the two most important places that you go is where you wake up and go to in the morning, and then who you're coming to after work at night. And so, man, that's just huge that you had those two things in line at that time. And so now you're moving into your second shop. Have you found that person you're looking to hire, or this is hypothetically speaking?
You
It's
know,
still
I have found a person with potential. And so me and him have been in talks for about a month, and I plan to bring him full-time December as a more experienced apprentice. You know, when I'm bringing people on board, obviously there's the technical aspect. And so I take the time to train these folks to the standard that my shop needs to produce, you know. And I told him, it's like, I don't really care how you do it, but this is the standard, you know what I mean? But more importantly, you know, when I'm hiring, I always hired a lot, like what you're talking about, Felix, like it can't be about the money. So when I hire them, like, why do you want this job? If they say money, next, you know, it can't be about that. It's got to be about something else. Now with this guy, he wants a more fulfilling line of work where he can be proud of his work and his craft. And he also wants a better work-life balance, because he's got some kids, younger kids, and it's just like, yeah, I totally get it. You know, like you got there, the money is not, the money will come, you know, like there's got to be something else, you know. And so when I interviewed, this guy interviewed really well, and he seems to vibe really well with me and my current apprentice. And so you know, if really I would have been happy with anybody with the right attitude. You know, I could care less if you know how to clean a car or not. That can be taught or taught. So but yeah, he seems to be that. So I've been very fortunate.
okay. So it sounds like, because my next question was going to be, when you are hiring like somebody like yourself, what are you looking for? But it sounds like somebody who's teachable, somebody who's not in it just for, you know, pastime, the money and stuff like that. Is there anything else, you know, passionate about their work?
You know, they have to have the right attitude. You know, I believe very strongly that like you have to have really strong will. Like your why has to be, you know, strong. Now, when I'm bringing people on board, I'm like, hey, when you're coming to work for me, you're helping me build this company up. And if you're an asset to my company, then you're an asset to me, and I'm going to treat you like an asset, not like an employee. You know, but at the same time too, much like in the financial world, when you're acquiring assets, you have to pick the right one, otherwise they become liabilities, and then that's, you know, then you need to go your separate ways if it's a liability, you know what I mean? And so yeah, when I'm hiring, they have to have the right mindset and mentality. You know, they don't have to be like, oh, I'm trying to be an entrepreneur, and you know, they don't have to do all that. That's my job. But they have to wake up, and I want them to not dread coming to work. I want them to wake up like, yeah, this is what I do for a living, and I'm proud of my work, and you know, I'm happy where I work, and I can afford to not only have the money but the time to do the things I really love and care about. Great, and this is a great place for you to work, right? You get to work with me. But if it's like, oh, I'm chasing the money, I'm like, okay, well then go work for the dealerships, or you know, go in sales. There's lots of money in sales. Go do that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's definitely what I'm looking for. It's like I said, more than money.
Nice. Okay. So what do you have coming up next? Like within the next, you know, 12, 24 months, 2 years, like what are you trying to accomplish?
You know, I want to step away from my business, to be honest. I actually want this business to start running itself.
Ultimate goal.
Yeah, and the one thing that I love about entrepreneurship is the idea of passive income, because currently right now I own my job, which means if I leave, the business stops, right? And I want to get to the point where if I leave, the business grows. So I'm going to slowly but surely start positioning myself where the business will have some sort of autonomy where I can afford to step away. Like, let's say I want to go to SEMA this year, I can just go. I don't have to put everything on hold, and I don't have to, reschedule things around. I can just go. Or like if I just need to take my wife out for a day off, like, hey, we have Friday off, great, we can just go, right? Because right now, a lot of people think like, oh, I'm a business owner, I'm my own boss, or I'm my own boss and I can do what I want. But it's just like, hey, you stop working, you stop getting paid. And so you end up working more. Matter of fact, I give myself mandatory Sundays off, because if I didn't, I would literally work 7 days a week. So it's just like, I want to have the ability to step away for longer periods at a time and not feel like, oh, my business is, suffering or, without me or whatever. I mean, it's still going to need me, but it's more hands off. Now, I will say this: when I was in Coon Rapids with my employee and my apprentice, I actually almost never touched the cars. It got to the point where I could focus on what I was good at, which is like the business and the sales half and the networking half, as opposed to just doing the manual labor all day long, right? And I want to get to the point where, I can do just that, and I'll go out and I'll do the training and I'll do the, I can do the quality checking, but for the most part, like, I don't have to touch the cars anymore. I want to get to that point. So I think in a year I should be to that point, and then in 2 years, 2 to 5 years, I want it to be autonomous, to the point where I can open another business. I know my wife is very entrepreneurial too, so she sees me chasing this dream and it's blowing up into something bigger than me, and then she's like, oh man, I want to do that too. And I'm like, okay, baby, like, let me do my thing, and then once this thing's taken off, I can go in and help you do your thing. You know what I mean? One project at a time.
Yeah, one step at a time, one step at a time. Okay, and so that's awesome. That's awesome. Wow, this has been amazing. You talked about determination, perseverance, having systems in your business, finances, just chasing your purpose, just all these things that are incorporated within your journey when you are an entrepreneur, and even in your personal life. So real quick, before we do log off, where can people find you? What are your social medias, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I'm primarily on Facebook, so facebook.com/humblecrewdetailing. That's where you'll find a lot of the content I post out. I try to make it interesting. I don't just try to post photos of cars and stuff. I try to do like funny videos and stuff too. I am on Instagram too, but not really. I mean, I do post on there, but the rollout post for me, I don't post it. And so my Instagram is at humble_crew_detailing. So pretty straightforward. And then I do have a YouTube channel. So I post videos up on my YouTube channel that are a little longer. A lot of times Instagram especially doesn't like long videos. And then Facebook, a lot of times they don't really like longer videos as well. So I do have a small YouTube channel. It's, Humble Crew Detailing on YouTube. So pretty straightforward. But that's where I post my stuff. I do post daily, so I try to be pretty good about that. And I try to spice it up. So yeah, give me a follow.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jesse. And I appreciate you stopping in and speaking with us.
Yeah, thanks, Felix. Thanks for having us.